The family dinner started like any other ambush. Mom's signature pot roast filled the air with a deceptively comforting aroma, while my brother Marcus sat across from me wearing that familiar smug expression I'd known since childhood. Dad focused intently on cutting his meat, avoiding eye contact, his standard behavior when Mom was about to drop a bomb. Emma, dear, Mom began, using her reasonable voice that was anything but, we need to discuss your house situation. I took a measured sip of water, already knowing where this was heading. The four-bedroom Victorian I'd purchased last year had become a point of contention, especially since Marcus's recent divorce. What about my house? I kept my tone neutral, though my grip on the water glass tightened slightly. Well, Mom continued, setting down her fork with practiced precision, your brother needs a proper home now that Sarah's taken everything in the divorce. And really, what does a single woman need with all that space? There it was, the same argument she'd been building toward for weeks, wrapped in her special blend of guilt and manipulation. Marcus nodded solemnly, playing his part perfectly. The kids need stability, Em. You know how hard this has been on them. The kids, of course. My niece and nephew were always the trump card, though neither Marcus nor my parents mentioned how his gambling had contributed to the divorce and loss of his family's home. I understand this is difficult, I said carefully, but my house isn't available. Mom's face shifted from reasonable to stern. Emma Grace Porter, your brother deserves that house more than you. He has a family to think about. I almost smiled at the irony. If they only knew about the other 19 properties I own through my investment company, or the technology platform I'd built that was revolutionizing property management across 3 states. Actually, I began, but Dad finally looked up, cutting me off. Your mother's right, Emma. Marcus needs help getting back on his feet. You've always been comfortable with your little computer job. This is what family does. My little computer job, their dismissive term for my technology company that had just closed its Series C funding round at $850 million. The company I'd built while they were busy telling me to get a real career and settle down like your brother. Marcus leaned forward, his expression earnest. I can pay you market rate, eventually. Once my new sales position takes off. I resisted the urge to point out this was his 4th new position this year. Instead, I reached for my phone, opening an app I'd designed myself. Before we continue this discussion, I said calmly, there's something you should see. Emma, Mom's voice carried a warning edge, this isn't the time for your internet things. Actually, I turned my phone screen toward them, this is exactly the time. You see, while you've been planning how to take my house, I've been busy building something. The app displayed my company's portfolio, Porter Tech Solutions, current valuation $3.2 billion. Below that, Porter Properties LLC, with its impressive list of residential and commercial holdings. What is this? Marcus squinted at the screen. This, I swiped to the next page, is my little computer job. The company I founded 6 years ago while you were all telling me to get serious about my future. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. That's impossible. You work in IT. I own an IT company, I corrected. One that's transformed how properties are managed, bought, and sold across the country. That internet thing you've been dismissing. It's worth more than your entire retirement portfolio, Dad. Mom's face had gone pale. But you live so simply. Your clothes, your car, market research, I explained. I like to understand all segments of the housing market. Just like I understand exactly which properties my company owns in this city. I paused, letting that sink in. Including, by the way, the building where Marcus's new company leases office space. Marcus's smug expression cracked. The rent increase last month was based on market analysis. Yes. My company believes in fair market value. If you had all this money, Mom's voice had shifted from demanding to bewildered. Why didn't you help your brother when he needed it? I offered, I reminded them. 3 years ago, when I saw the signs of his gambling problem, I tried to get him into a program. I offered to help manage his finances. What did you all tell me? The silence was heavy with memory. They'd dismissed my concerns, called me jealous of Marcus's perfect life, told me to focus on finding a husband instead of interfering in my brother's business. You said I was trying to control him. I continued, that I was bitter about his success. Well, let's talk about success. I pulled up another screen on my phone, Marcus's credit report, his gambling debts, the tax liens he'd tried to hide. I know everything, Marcus. Every casino marker, every loan, every failed attempt to cover your tracks. I know because my company's financial analysis software flagged you as a high-risk tenant months ago. You've been spying on me. His face flushed with anger. I've been protecting my investments, I corrected. The same way I've been protecting my interests while you all assumed I was struggling. Mom found her voice again. But surely now that we know about your success, you can help your brother. Family helps family. Interesting you should say that, I said, opening another file. Because I have helped family. I've been anonymously paying for therapy for Marcus's kids since the divorce. I set up a college fund for them when I saw their education savings had been emptied. I even hired a financial advisor to help Sarah rebuild after Marcus nearly destroyed her credit. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus stared at his plate, his anger deflating into shame. Dad's businessman facade cracked, showing genuine surprise. Mom's hands trembled as she reached for her wine glass. The house you're so eager to take from me. I continued, it's not just a home. It's a beta test site for my company's newest smart home technology. The property value has tripled since installation. But you didn't bother to ask about that, did you? You just assumed I had something you could take. We didn't know, Dad said quietly. You didn't want to know, I corrected. You were all too busy telling me how to live my life to notice what I was actually doing with it. I stood up, smoothing my simple blazer, the one Mom constantly criticized for being off the rack. It was actually custom made in Milan, but that was beside the point. Now, about Marcus's situation, I pulled out my tablet, pulling up another document. I have a proper solution, one that involves responsibility, not handouts. What do you mean? Marcus asked, his voice small. My company has an opening for a compliance analyst, entry-level position, but with room for growth. The salary is enough to rent a decent apartment. More importantly, it comes with mandatory financial counseling and enrollment in our addiction recovery program. You want me to work for you? The disbelief in his voice was almost comical. I want you to work, period. To earn your way back. To show your kids what real responsibility looks like. Mom started to protest, but I held up my hand. This is a one-time offer, Marcus. Take the job, follow the program, rebuild your life the right way. Or don't, but stop expecting others to fix your mistakes. And my house, he couldn't help asking, is not and never will be available, I said firmly. But if you take this opportunity, work hard for 2 years, and maintain sobriety, my company has a first-time homebuyer program you might qualify for. At market rate, with standard financing. I gathered my things, preparing to leave. The job offer stands for 48 hours. The choice is yours. Emma, Mom tried one last time. We're just trying to help your brother. No, I said gently. You're trying to take from one child to enable another. But I'm offering something better, a chance for Marcus to help himself. At the door I turned back. Oh, and Mom, this off-the-rack blazer you've been criticizing. It's bespoke, everything I wear is. I just never felt the need to broadcast it. I left them sitting there, surrounded by the shattered pieces of their assumptions and the weight of everything they'd failed to see. Whether they'd learn from this revelation was up to them. But one thing was certain, they'd never again mistake my silence for weakness or my success for something they could claim. 2 weeks into his new job, Marcus sat in my corporate office, looking distinctly uncomfortable in his regulation business attire. The compliance training manual lay open on his tablet, another sign of change for a brother who'd once mocked my obsession with screens. The financial monitoring protocols, he began, then stopped, clearly struggling with the terminology. I'm not sure I understand. Walk me through what you don't get, I said, keeping my tone professional. We'd established clear boundaries during office hours. I was his employer, not his sister. The view from my 47th floor office seemed to unnerve him. Perhaps it was the stark contrast to his former sales office, or maybe it was the way my smart glass windows automatically adjusted their tint as clouds passed overhead. A feature my company had pioneered. It's all so systematic, he admitted, looking for patterns, flagging anomalies. Like what you did with my gambling. Exactly like that, I confirmed. Our system caught your behavior patterns long before the casino's own protocols did. He flinched slightly but nodded. The mandatory counseling sessions were having an effect, He was learning to face his choices head on. A notification popped up on my main screen. Mom had arrived for her scheduled meeting. I'd given her a visitor's badge, not the family access she'd demanded. Another boundary being enforced. Your performance review is next week, I told Marcus. HR will conduct it, not me. You'll be evaluated on the same criteria as any other employee. The old me would have expected special treatment, he said quietly. The old you isn't employed here, I replied. Speaking of which, how's the apartment? He'd moved into one of my company's standard corporate housing units, a modest two-bedroom that felt worlds away from his former luxury condo. The kids stayed with him every other weekend, sleeping in bunk beds instead of their old custom-designed rooms. It's teaching me things, he said carefully, about what I really need versus what I thought I needed. Another notification, Mom was being escorted up by security. She tried to bypass the check-in process twice before learning that my systems tracked every entrance and exit. Your 10 o'clock is here, Marcus noted, standing. I should get back to training. Marcus, I called as he reached the door. The kids' college fund statements will be sent to your counselor, not you, not Mom and Dad. You can earn access to that information by meeting your program milestones. He paused, hand on the doorknob. You really did think of everything. I had to, I said simply. Someone needed to. Mom entered as Marcus left, her designer handbag clutched like armor. She'd shown up in full society regalia, clearly hoping to impress someone. The question was who? The Ladies' Auxiliary Board is very interested in your company's charitable foundation, she began, settling into a visitor's chair. Our foundation operates on merit-based grants, I said, pulling up the relevant documents. We don't accept influence from social connections. But surely as your mother, as my mother, I interrupted gently, you should be proud that your daughter's company maintains strict ethical standards. Her face did that familiar tightening thing, the look she'd worn throughout my childhood, when I'd refused to conform to her expectations. I am proud, she said, then added, now that I understand what you've built. Do you? I asked, genuinely curious. Understand what I've built. I gestured to the wall of screens showing real-time data from properties across the country, smart buildings operating at peak efficiency, environmental systems automatically adjusting, security protocols running silently in the background. Your father says the technology is revolutionary, she offered. Dad's learning, I acknowledged. He's actually taking coding classes now. Says he wants to understand the future. And Marcus, she hesitated. His counselor says he's making progress. He is, I confirmed. When he's ready, there are advancement opportunities. But he has to earn them. Like you earned all this. There was a new note in her voice, something close to understanding. Nothing was given to me, I reminded her. Including your support. She flinched but didn't argue. The society matron who'd spent years lamenting my single status and computer obsession was finally seeing the bigger picture. The house, she said finally. The one Marcus wanted. It's worth more than we thought, isn't it? I pulled up the property specs on my main screen. It's a test site for our next-generation home automation system. The technology inside it is worth more than the property itself. And we just assumed, you assumed what you always have, I finished. That I had something you could redistribute according to your priorities. A message popped up from my CFO. Our latest acquisition had cleared regulatory approval. Another technology company absorbed into my growing empire, though my family was only just beginning to grasp the scope of what I controlled. The foundation grant applications, Mom said, returning to her original purpose. Would you show me how they work? Not to influence anything, just to understand. It was a small step, but a significant one. Mom asking to learn rather than demanding to direct. The criteria are based on innovation and community impact, I explained, pulling up the documentation. Organizations need to demonstrate both need and viability. For the next hour, I walked her through the process. She asked intelligent questions, took notes, and never once mentioned her social connections. Progress. As she prepared to leave, she paused. Your brother's children, their college fund, is managed by professional trustees, I said firmly, with strict conditions for disbursement. You've protected them. she said slowly. All this time, while we were questioning your choices, you were protecting everyone. I protected what needed protecting, I corrected. Including myself. After she left, I stood at my smart glass windows, watching the city below. Somewhere down there, Marcus was learning compliance protocols. Dad was probably puzzling over coding exercises, and Mom was likely reassessing every assumption she'd ever made about success. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus's counselor confirming his attendance at all required sessions. Another from the kids' school thanking me for the anonymous technology grant that would upgrade their computer lab. A notification that the trust fund had automatically rebalanced its investments based on market algorithms I'd designed. I'd built safeguards into everything, creating systems to protect even those who'd never believed I needed protecting myself. A final message popped up, Dad asking if I had time to review his first attempt at coding a simple property management function. Attached was a basic but functional program, not bad for someone who dismissed coding as playing with computers less than a month ago. I sent back a brief response. Good start. Remember to include error handling. Real estate doesn't forgive sloppy code. Looking out over my city, and it was increasingly my city, I thought about the family dinner that had started all this. Their attempt to take my house had revealed something far bigger. A daughter they'd underestimated. A sister they'd dismissed, a woman who'd built an empire while they weren't watching. Now they were watching, learning, adapting, and finally beginning to understand that some things can't be taken, they have to be earned. 3 months after the family dinner revelation, I sat reviewing Marcus's first quarterly performance evaluation. His scores were surprisingly solid, not exceptional but steadily improving. The counselor's report showed consistent attendance and engagement. Most importantly, his financial monitoring algorithms had caught 2 potential fraud cases that our regular systems might have missed. He understands the mindset, his supervisor had noted, knows how people try to hide addictive behaviors. A notification flashed on my screen. Dad had submitted his first complete property management module for review. The code was rough but showed promise. He'd clearly been studying beyond the basic classes I'd arranged. Your father's coding progress is remarkable, my CTO commented during our morning meeting. For someone his age, starting from zero. He's motivated, I said simply. Fear of irrelevance is a powerful teacher. The transformation in my family had been fascinating to watch. Dad had traded his golf clubs for Python tutorials. Mom had stopped sending me links to dating sites and started forwarding articles about women in tech leadership. And Marcus was becoming someone his kids could actually look up to. A message from my assistant interrupted my thoughts. Your mother is here for the foundation meeting. I checked the time. She was 15 minutes early, another change. The society matron who'd always believed in fashionably late arrivals now treated business meetings with careful respect. Send her in, I said, closing Marcus's evaluation. Mom entered, tablet in hand. No designer handbag in sight. She'd finally understood that in my world, functionality mattered more than fashion signals. I've reviewed the grant proposals, she said, getting straight to business. The statistical analysis you requested is in the shared folder. I pulled up her work, pleasantly surprised. She'd actually learned to use our data analysis tools, producing insights about community needs that went beyond her usual social metrics. This is good, I acknowledged. You've identified patterns we missed. I talked to people, she said, not just at charity luncheons. I visited the communities, used your assessment protocols. A pause. I'm beginning to understand why you lived in that small apartment all those years. Research, I confirmed. Can't solve housing problems from an ivory tower. Your brother's apartment, she began carefully, the one you provided through the company, is appropriate for his current position and salary. I finished. And no, it won't be upgraded until he earns it. She nodded, accepting this new reality where her children's lives weren't hers to arrange. He's different there. More responsible. The kids notice it too. Structure helps, I said, pulling up another screen. Speaking of which, their education trust showed some interesting activity. The smart display filled with graphs, showing the children's academic progress since I'd implemented the enrichment program. Their grades had improved, particularly in STEM subjects. The coding classes I'd anonymously sponsored were paying off. They want to be like their Aunt Emma, Mom said quietly. though they still don't know exactly what that means. They know I expect them to earn their opportunities. I replied. That's enough for now. A notification popped up. Marcus had flagged another suspicious transaction pattern. His instincts were getting sharper, his work more confident. The brother who'd once dismissed my career as playing with computers was now immersed in the very technology he'd mocked. The Ladies' Auxiliary is hosting their annual charity gala, Mom said, changing subjects. They'd like to honor you as Businesswoman of the Year. I raised an eyebrow. The same women who spent years asking when I was going to get a real job. They've learned, she said simply. We all have. And this has nothing to do with their children's companies wanting investment opportunities. Mom actually smiled. Oh, it has everything to do with that. But they'll have to earn it, won't they? Just like Marcus is earning his way back. I studied her for a moment. The social climber who'd once measured success by country club memberships was learning to see power differently. The gala, I said finally. Will it be at the Highland Club? Yes, though they're having technical difficulties with their new property management system. I know. I cut in. My company owns the software. And the building. Her eyes widened slightly. Is there anything in this city you don't own? Plenty, I said. But I own enough to ensure things are done properly. Another notification. Dad's coding project had passed its first security audit. Not perfect, but promising. He'd included comments in his code explaining his thought process. Old business wisdom, translated into new technology logic. Your father's very proud, Mom said, following my gaze to the notification. Though he'll never admit how wrong he was about your career choices. He doesn't have to, I replied. His actions show it. The afternoon sun played across my smart windows, automatically adjusting their tint. Below, the city continued its rhythm, unaware that so many of its systems now ran on code I'd written. Properties I controlled, innovations I'd pioneered. The foundation meeting, I said, returning to business. You'll present your findings to the board. No special treatment. They'll evaluate your analysis on merit. Mom straightened in her chair, accepting the challenge. I've prepared thoroughly, and I understand if they don't approve all my recommendations. Progress indeed. After she left, I reviewed the latest reports from Marcus's counselor. His gambling triggers were better controlled, his financial decisions more measured. He'd started teaching his kids about responsible money management, lessons he'd learned the hard way. A message from his supervisor. He's ready for additional responsibilities, small steps but moving forward. I authorized the progress report to be shared with the counselor. Another piece in the careful structure I'd built around my brother's recovery. Everything monitored, everything earned, nothing given without purpose. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Coding challenge giving me trouble. Dinner tonight to discuss. Promise not to mention any real job opportunities. The joke held a hint of healthy self-awareness. The father who'd once insisted I follow his path now wanted to learn mine. I typed back, 7 p.m. Bring your laptop. And Dad, include error handling this time. The city lights were coming on as evening approached. Thousands of buildings running on systems I'd designed. Somewhere out there Marcus was probably helping his kids with their coding homework. Mom was likely reviewing community data instead of planning social events. Dad was struggling with programming syntax instead of playing golf. All of them learning, adapting, earning their place in the world I'd built while they weren't watching. A final notification popped up. The trust fund for Marcus's kids had automatically allocated their quarterly educational bonuses, tied to their improved grades. They'd never know it came from me, but they'd understand the lesson. Success comes from effort, not entitlement. I turned back to my screens, to the empire I'd created, to the family I was carefully rebuilding on stronger foundations. Let them learn, let them grow, let them finally understand that real power isn't taken or given. It's built, line by line, choice by choice, day by day, just like I'd built everything else they'd failed to see. 6 months after the fateful family dinner, I stood at the podium of the Highland Club's grand ballroom, surveying the assembled crowd of society's elite. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same people who'd once whispered about my unfortunate career choices were now hanging on my every word. My acceptance speech for Businesswoman of the Year was brief, focused on innovation and merit rather than social connections. In the audience, Mom sat with perfect posture, but her tablet was open to our company's latest financial reports instead of her usual social calendar. Success isn't inherited, I concluded, making eye contact with Marcus, who sat with his kids in the front row. It's built, tested, and earned. Just like respect. The applause was genuine, not the polite society clapping I'd grown up hearing. These people had finally realized that their children's future opportunities might depend on impressing me, not the other way around. After the ceremony, I found my family gathered near the smart display I'd had installed in the club's entrance. Dad was actually explaining the basic functionality to some of his old golf buddies, his newfound technical knowledge evident in his confident tone. The property management system alone has increased efficiency by 30%, he was saying. And that's just the beginning of what this technology can do. Marcus's children were showing their friends the coding project they'd created, a simple app that tracked their allowance and chores. Their faces glowed with genuine pride, not the entitled satisfaction I'd once seen in them. They're different kids, Marcus said quietly, joining me. Thanks to you. Thanks to stability and consequences, I corrected. How's the new project coming along? He'd recently been promoted to team lead in the compliance department, his understanding of addiction and recovery, proving invaluable in detecting patterns of financial misconduct. We've identified 3 potential cases of gambling-related fraud, he replied, using methods I used to use myself. That's why you're good at this, I said. You understand the mindset. Mom approached, her tablet still displaying company data. Emma dear, the foundation board approved my community development proposal. On its merits, I reminded her. Not because you're my mother. I know, she said, and the pride in her voice was different now, earned rather than assumed. I did the research, built the case, defended the numbers. Speaking of numbers, Dad joined us, his own tablet showing his latest coding project. I think I've finally figured out that debugging issue. I glanced at his screen, noting the improved structure of his code. Much better. You're learning to think systematically. Had a good teacher, he said simply, even if it took me too long to realize it. The children ran up, excited to show me their latest coding achievement. The app they'd built had evolved, now including basic investment concepts I'd suggested. They were learning early lessons I'd had to teach myself. Aunt Emma, my niece asked, can we come to your office next week? We want to show the junior developers our new ideas. Earn it, I said, but smiled. Show me your grades first. They nodded seriously, understanding the equation of effort and reward. Behind them Marcus watched with a mixture of gratitude and regret, remembering perhaps the lessons he'd learned too late. As the evening wound down, I found myself on the club's terrace, looking out over the city I'd helped reshape. Mom joined me, her social butterfly tendencies replaced by a new, more thoughtful presence. I was so wrong about you, she said softly. We all were. You saw what you expected to see, I replied. A single daughter who didn't fit your template for success. While you were building an empire. She shook her head, right under our noses. The house, I said, referring to the property that had started it all, was never really about the house, was it? No, she admitted. It was about control, about maintaining what we thought was the natural order of things.
And now?
She gestured to where Marcus was helping his kids explain their app to some amazed elderly board members. Now we're learning your order, your rules, because they work better. Dad joined us, his tablet tucked under his arm like the briefcase he'd once carried. The coding class is asking if I'll share my experience learning tech at my age. Apparently I'm becoming an example. Of adaptation, I nodded. Of choosing to learn instead of resist. Inside, the smart displays I'd installed continued to showcase my company's innovations. The same society people who'd once dismissed me as a misguided techie were now eagerly taking notes, hoping to understand even a fraction of what I'd built. Your brother, Mom said carefully. He's becoming the father we always pretended he was. Because pretense doesn't work in my world, I replied. Code either functions or it doesn't. Numbers either add up or they don't. Merit isn't a matter of opinion. The children's laughter drifted out to the terrace. Genuine joy in creation rather than consumption. They were growing up in the world I'd helped build, where innovation mattered more than inheritance. The trust fund, Marcus joined our group, the one you set up for the kids. The counselor showed me the structure today.
And Dad?
It's brilliant, he said simply. Every incentive tied to effort, every reward linked to achievement. You built in all the safeguards I should have provided. I protected what needed protecting, I said, echoing my words from months ago, including them, including you, when you were finally ready to be protected. Mom's tablet chimed. Another foundation proposal ready for review. Dad's pinged with feedback from his coding mentor. Marcus's phone buzzed with a compliance alert. All of them now connected to the systems I'd built. The future I'd seen coming. The next board meeting, Dad said, your mother and I would like to present some ideas. Together, if you'll hear them. On merit, I reminded them. We wouldn't dare suggest otherwise. Mom smiled. We've learned that lesson rather thoroughly. The city lights sparkled below us, many of them controlled by my company's smart grid technology. In the reflection of the club's windows, I could see our family's image, transformed, realigned, rebuilt on stronger foundations. Time to go, I said, checking my own notifications. Early meeting tomorrow. The Tokyo expansion won't manage itself. They nodded, understanding now that my computer things spanned continents, shaped cities, built futures. As we walked through the club's halls, past the wealthy families who'd once judged me, I saw respect replace condescension in their eyes. Let them see, let them learn, let them finally understand that success isn't inherited or seized. It's engineered, one line of code, one smart decision, one earned opportunity at a time. Just like family.